It never starts with chaos. It starts with something quieter. Something deceptively ordinary. A woman in her early 40s stands in her kitchen, slicing fruit for a lunchbox, scrolling her phone with her free hand. A school run in 10 minutes. A meeting at 11. Dinner at 6. The rhythm of a life she's lived for so long she can perform it half asleep. But inside her, something is shifting. A quiet click. A micro break. A feeling she can't name yet. No one sees this moment. No one hears it. But this is the day she snaps. Not in anger. Not in rage. But in clarity. Psychologists call it a threshold moment, the point where years of emotional neglect, self-abandonment, and swallowed resentment finally collide with one terrifying realization. I don't know who I am anymore. Women in their 40s often enter what some researchers call the second adolescence, a period where suppressed dreams, ignored cravings, and the fear of wasted time all surge back with the force of a tidal wave. The world praises her for being the reliable one, the glue, the caretaker, the woman who holds everything together. But no one ever asks who holds her. For 20 years, she has played the good roles: good wife, good mother, good employee, good citizen. But good roles can become invisible prisons. And one day, she wakes up inside the life she built, and realizes she doesn't remember building it. She only remembers maintaining it. This chapter begins with that internal fracture, the moment when a woman realizes she has been living on autopilot, running a script someone else wrote for her. There is no explosion. No dramatic fight. No slammed door. Just a quiet decision forming in the background of her mind: what if I deserve something more? Rule card: a woman doesn't destroy her life in one moment. She abandons it after 1,000 moments where she felt unseen. And as she steps into her car that morning, she has no idea. The thought she had today becomes the action that will change everything tomorrow. There's a moment every adult faces, though few ever admit it. A moment when the life they're living collides with the life they imagined. And the difference between the two becomes a quiet kind of grief. For women over 40, this grief hits harder than anyone expects. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation, the human tendency to get used to everything, even the things we once prayed for. The house she dreamed of. Normal. The husband she adored. Predictable. The kids she once held like treasure. Now teenagers drifting into their own worlds. What used to feel magical has become background noise. And then comes the more dangerous realization: I built a stable life, but I never built myself. This is where identity foreclosure appears. It happens when someone chooses a life path too early, before they truly understand who they are. She committed to wifehood. She committed to motherhood. But she never committed to herself. Take a simple example. A woman named Clara, 43, married, 2 kids, sits in her car outside a grocery store. She doesn't cry. She doesn't break down. Instead, she feels nothing. A numbness that scares her more than sadness ever could. She did everything right. Everything society told her would bring fulfillment. But fulfillment didn't arrive. Routine did. Responsibility did. A slow suffocation disguised as stability did. And now, a ghost follows her everywhere. Not a supernatural one, something worse. The ghost of the life she never lived. Who would she have been if she'd taken risks? If she'd followed passion instead of safety? If she'd said no at 23? If she'd chosen differently at 30? These questions don't haunt her. They taunt her. Because for the first time, she realizes time is no longer infinite. Her youth is not coming back. Her body is changing. Her parents are aging. Her children are growing distant. Life is moving faster than she can make sense of. Rule card: a midlife crisis isn't a desire to escape your life. It's a desire to escape the version of yourself that never got to exist. And in the middle of that crisis, one dangerous idea begins to whisper: maybe I can still choose a different path. A whisper that soon becomes a temptation she can't ignore. It never begins with betrayal. It begins with being seen. A woman who has spent years feeling invisible suddenly receives a message, a comment, a look, something small, almost meaningless. Yet it hits her with the force of an earthquake. Not because the attention is extraordinary, but because it is rare. This is where psychology steps in. When someone has lived in emotional starvation for years, even a single drop of validation feels like water in the desert. And the giver of that validation, whether a coworker, an old friend, or a stranger in her DMs, becomes a symbol of everything she has been missing. That symbol becomes intoxicating. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement the most addictive reward pattern in human behavior. She doesn't get attention all the time. Just enough. Just unpredictably enough. And that unpredictability creates obsession. Soon, she experiences limerence, the dizzying, obsessive high of infatuation. A state where the imagination runs faster than reality. A state where simple "how are you" feels like a rescue mission. At home, she feels like a caretaker. Outside, she feels like a woman again. The contrast is powerful and dangerous. Let's make it real. Imagine a 45-year-old woman named Mara. Her husband is reliable, kind, but emotionally absent. He loves her, but he no longer notices her. She becomes part of the furniture, appreciated, but ignored. Then a man from her past sends a simple DM. No flirtation. Just connection. But the emotional effect. Massive. For the first time in years, her heart wakes up. She laughs differently. She moves differently. She looks in the mirror and recognizes a version of herself she thought she'd buried. She doesn't see the man as a danger. She sees him as a lifeboat. And once she steps inside that lifeboat, emotionally or physically, she rewrites the entire narrative of her actions. I'm not betraying my family. I'm rescuing myself. This is how ordinary women, good women, cross lines they once swore they never would. Not out of lust. Out of starvation. Rule card: a person doesn't fall into an affair because they want pleasure. They fall because they want to feel alive again. And once she crosses that invisible boundary, even slightly, there is no going back. Only forward into consequences she hasn't yet imagined. Every forbidden choice eventually sends out a shockwave. Not immediately. Not dramatically. But slowly, like cracks spreading through glass. For a woman over 40 who risks her family for a new start, the first crack appears inside her mind. Guilt. Shame. Fear. But also, a strange, defiant hope. This is the psychological split that tears her apart. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the mental war that erupts when someone tries to hold two identities at once. The devoted mother and the secret rebel. She wants both. She believes she can be both. But every lie she tells, every text she hides, every unexplained trip, increases the pressure on a mind already stretched thin. Then comes the second crack. The family begins to feel the shift. A partner senses distance. Children notice she's distracted. A home once filled with predictable routines now carries a subtle, unsettling tension. No one can put it into words. But they feel it. Emotional absence has a smell. A temperature. A shape. Let's look at a real-world vignette. A 46-year-old mother named Evelyn begins living a double life. To her kids, nothing has changed. She still cheers at soccer games and signs permission slips. But her eyes drift. Her laughter becomes hollow. Her hugs, shorter. Children may not understand adult psychology, but they understand emotional abandonment instantly. Her partner, meanwhile, tries to decode the distance. Is it stress? Menopause? Work? Him? And slowly, painfully, he realizes the truth. She didn't fall out of love with him. She fell out of love with the version of herself she became with him. This is the cost no one talks about. A new start isn't clean. It isn't empowering. It isn't romantic. It is a demolition. One that forces everyone around her to live inside the rubble. Underneath her rebellion sits a deeper wound, one formed long before marriage, before children, before midlife. According to attachment theory, insecure childhood bonds often recreate themselves in adulthood. People chase chaos when they were raised in chaos. They chase escape when they were raised on unpredictability. Her past is not an excuse, but it is a map. And that map leads to the final question. When the dust settles and the thrill fades, was the destruction worth the freedom? Rule card: Every new start creates casualties. Most of them innocent. And now we arrive at the heart of it, the truth about the fresh start she risked everything to chase. Every story of reinvention carries a shadow. Not the shadow of who she was, but the shadow of what she refused to face. Because here's the truth most people avoid, a new start isn't a destination. It's an escape route. And escape routes eventually run out of road. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. The same force that dulled her marriage will eventually dull the thrill of the new relationship, the new freedom, the new identity. The high can't stay high. The fantasy can't stay fantasy. Eventually, real life returns. Bills. Routines. Arguments. Disappointment. And one day she wakes up with a chilling realization, I escaped my life, but I never escaped myself. The void she ran from was internal, not external. A hunger for identity. A desperation to feel alive. A fear of time slipping through her fingers. Some women rebuild beautifully. Some crash harder than before. Most end up discovering a secret no one likes to admit. They weren't searching for a new man, or a new home, or a new dream. They were searching for the version of themselves they lost along the way. This is where the deeper work begins, integration. Midlife isn't about crisis. It's about merging the split selves, the one who sacrificed everything, and the one who still wants to live. When those two selves finally meet, something powerful happens. She stops chasing escape. She starts building identity. She stops waiting for permission. She starts telling the truth, first to herself, then to everyone else. This chapter isn't about blame. It isn't about villainizing women or defending men. It's about acknowledging the silent emotional drift that destroys families long before anyone acts on it. Relationships break not because of a single betrayal, but because of thousands of unsaid words. Rule card: if you don't consciously rewrite your life from the inside, you'll eventually burn it down from the outside. And that is the real story behind women over 40 risking their families for a new start. Not selfishness. Not evil. Not immorality. A desperate longing to meet the version of themselves they abandoned, long before anyone else noticed she was gone.